Welcome back. I'm Vishal Dahiya, and you're watching Sansad TV's continuous coverage of 16th vice presidential election. We've been bringing you all the updates and detailed analysis of this polling process. Just a short while back, Jagdeep Dhankhar, the NDA nominee, has been declared the winner of this particular election. He is now the new vice president-elect, vice president of India. And the details vis-a-vis the polling process have also come out. In total, 725 votes were polled during this entire day, out of which 15 votes were termed as invalid. So the number of valid votes was 710. Out of those 710, the magic figure or the number required to win this election was determined to be 356. Jagdeep Dhankhar, the NDA nominee, secured 528 votes out of these, and Margaret, the opposition's joint candidate, could secure 182. So the result is out there for all of us. Jagdeep Dhankhar will be the new vice president of India. And for more on this, to try and understand, all about this election process, about the new upcoming vice president of India, as well as the outgoing vice president, Venkaiah Naidu, and his tenure as well, we joined by a distinguished panel of experts. Let me first introduce them to you. We have with us three senior journalists. Mr. Pradeep Kaushal is here with us, Mr. K.V. Prasad, and Mr. Sanjay Singh as well. Welcome, all of you gentlemen. I'll start with you, Mr. Kaushal. Let's first talk about the result. Let's first look at the figures and these numbers as well. 12 more than what the outgoing president secured in 2017.
The things which stand out as 15 votes have been found invalid. So considering the fact that these are elected representatives of people, it's amazing that even their votes have been found invalid. So one can only guess that maybe that's deliberate. I don't think that these people wouldn't have known how one had to vote. Number two, the opposition failed to come together. And the Trinamool Congress, one of the main opposition parties, it decided to boycott the election. And, well, we have to wait to see how many people, if at all, have cross-voted, particularly from the Congress party.
Okay. Okay, those numbers are obviously going to be really important to try and analyze and understand what is happening in various camps there. But Mr. K.V. Prasad, again, looking at these figures, one which I was pointing out and one which Mr. Kaushal has referred to, 528 versus 182. The question is, could the opposition camp have done better? And those 15 votes which have been termed as invalid, what does that signify?
Well, as Mr. Kaushal pointed out, we don't know the character of the votes in the sense which parties or members of the parliament have cast a vote which have been declared invalid. I don't have the breakup, at least right now, for me to analyze that portion of it. But if you look at the final numbers, certainly you can always say the opposition could have done better. Not winning in any case, that everybody knew right from the beginning because the die was cast. The ruling, the coalition had the numbers, so there was no way anybody else could even entertain the thought of putting up a contest in that sense of a term. But yes, the opposition was not united in the sense they had deep differences among themselves. Very soon, we had this Trinamool Congress, as Mr. Kaushal pointed out, walking away, deciding to stay away from the process. They did get support here and there, but that was surely not enough. Certainly not enough. Of course, you can always say the victory margin, as you pointed out, was greater in terms of last time. I don't see it as a surprise. One, because the kind of effort the opposition would have had to make to get more votes was certainly missing. And that resulted in the candidate doing her best to see and the parties in whatever form and fashion.
So okay. Sanjay ji, fragmented opposition, not on the same page, perhaps lack of communication, sort of redux of what we saw in the presidential election as well.
See, Vishal, BJP thrives on this kind of contest. The central message which emanates from presidential election and vice presidential election is that there is no united opposition. There is no opposition worthwhile which can take on might of the BJP. What had happened ahead of presidential election and vice presidential election? People started talking, the parties concerned in opposition, that this is in a way run up to 2024 elections. And there were two chief ministers who went suo moto inviting other party leaders, Mamata Banerjee and KCR from Telangana.
TRS.
And TRS. Now what has happened? In these elections, if you see the two parties which were most enthusiastic about these elections, Congress, which is largest in opposition camp, was practically either inactive or not to be seen. Both Trinamool Congress in presidential election, as you know, Mamata Banerjee said if Draupadi Murmu was to be announced and taken in confidence NDA, we could have gone for a consensus candidate. In these elections, Mamata Banerjee has abstained from these elections. And when did she announce? Immediately after Jagdeep Dhankhar was announced as candidate of the BJP formation. Margaret Alva, on the other hand, is candidate of the opposition camp. See, Margaret Alva, I don't know how much enthusiastic Congress was about her own party, its own party's candidate, Margaret Alva. Margaret Alva, in her book, Courage and Conviction, her autobiography, has thrashed Sonia Gandhi, the Congress party, the organizational setup, left, right, and center. She has even said Christian Michel, the middleman of Augusta Westland, they had family relationship. Christian Michel's father, Wolfgang Michel, had relations with Sanjay Gandhi, and during Indira regime, there was some hanky-panky, some tank deal was happening, now this is happening. Then she has also substantiated what Prime Minister Modi was saying. Ma beti ki sarkar. Manmohan Singh wanted to make her a minister, Sonia Gandhi vetoed it. And there's so many references how writing Sonia Gandhi runs party on whims and fancies.
Okay.
How much Congress party was enthusiastic about its own candidate? Who proposed Margaret Alva's name? I have not seen a photograph of Sonia Gandhi kind of endorsing Margaret Alva, appealing to people, or Rahul Gandhi appealing to the MPs concerned that vote for Margaret Alva.
But Rahul Gandhi was present during the nomination.
Was present for filing the nomination, but when the candidate was decided, he was nowhere. Same way, if you see this, and on the other hand, you see a kind of a situation when Jagdeep Dhankhar, as West Bengal governor, was in newspaper every day, almost every day, because of certain kind of conflict that was happening between him and Mamata Banerjee, the chief minister and governor, at the loggerheads. What happens when his nomination is announced? We get the news that prior to announcement, over tea, a courtesy call, whatever, Mamata Banerjee, Jagdeep Dhankhar, and Assam Chief Minister, Himanta Biswa Sarma met.
Okay.
I'm saying this is about conveying a larger message. In terms of putting Jagdeep Dhankhar, the NDA sends out a message that an OBC candidate, a person from Jat community, which was at loggerheads with the BJP, a person who has certain experience in kind of managing such things, being governor, has been made our nominee. What message Congress and other parties, supportive parties, which proposed Margaret Alva's name, are sending to people at large?
Okay. Now there might be, different reasons behind it. But Pradeep ji, I'll begin with you. And, we're looking at this strategy from both camps, from the ruling party, from the opposition camp as well. And let's look at both these elections, the presidential election and the vice presidential election in a nutshell. Draupadi Murmu's candidature was announced. BJD immediately supported her candidature. Jharkhand Mukti Morcha, despite the fact that it is still, running a government with the Congress in Jharkhand, ended up supporting her as well. Now, Jagdeep Dhankhar's name is announced as NDA candidate, and Sanjay ji is pointing out, Mamata Banerjee, one of the main constituent of the opposition camp, also decides to abstain from the vice presidential poll. What do you see in terms of the strategy deployed here by the ruling side and lacking from the opposition camp?
If you look at the presidential election, the Prime Minister himself reached out to the Biju Janata Dal chief and Odisha Chief Minister Naveen Patnaik to request him to support Draupadi Murmu's candidature. It was also because she belonged to Odisha that Naveen Patnaik could have felt called upon to support her candidature. But a request from the Prime Minister looks more gracious. There was no such effort by anybody from the opposition camp. Number two, the BJP went out of its way to work on other parties which were not so strongly committed to the opposition camp to secure their support. You look at the YSR Congress, for instance. It supported the BJP in both elections. They are not NDA partners. Then the Bahujan Samaj Party supported the NDA candidates in both elections. They are not constituents of the NDA. So while there was a lot of enthusiasm in the NDA camp for its candidates, there was no such sentiment in the opposition camp. Even Margaret Alva, if you look at the way her electioneering went, there was no Congress participation beyond the token presence of Rahul Gandhi at the time of filing of nomination papers. There was no concerted campaign. She didn't go to different state capitals to secure support. If it was supposed to be a token fight, I think their working never went beyond it. It remained a symbolic fight.
Let's now step back a little bit, Mr. Prasad. I'll begin with you, and let's also look at what lies ahead for the president or vice president elect of the country, Mr. Jagdeep Dhankhar, and look at it and try and understand it in terms of how the tenure of the outgoing vice president M. Venkaiah Naidu went in terms of as vice president, as well as more significantly, the chairperson or chairman of Rajya Sabha.
I think that post has a lot of significance and a direct contribution of the post of the vice president, because the vice president is the ex officio chairman of Rajya Sabha, or chairperson of Rajya Sabha, as you may wish to call. Having said that, I think if you look at the contribution, and lasting contribution can be seen in the way in which the proceedings happen on a daily basis. And remember, on an average, maybe any time between 70 to 90 days of the house sittings happen, and over a 5-year period. And that's a lot of work that can be documented and is documented, shown, and innovations to ensure the conduct of the proceedings remain smooth, of course, is one area, but contribute to the deliberative body as it is known as. The larger deliberations that happen, because the whole argument is the Council of States is like the senatorial saucer, where you take time to cool down things, understand the process, and take the forward. So as you mentioned, the outgoing chairman, Mr. Venkaiah Naidu's work has very recently come out, the amount of work that went into it. There are many things that things happened, including his oversight of committee work.
Indeed.
Which, of course, I think is again, by quantifying the work, it sent a message that the chairman is watching the work of the committees, because a lot of work actually happens in the committees, which does not necessarily come out in the public, because by the very nature of work, committee sittings are not meant for public consumption, except when the reports are out. So that's one way, because the attendance of members, how seriously they were taking part in the debates and discussion inside the committees, all this got quantified. And remember, we had this committee system since 1992-93. So it's a long period. That is one area. Secondly, I think some of the innovations or accent on trying to promote or trying to encourage people to speak in the mother tongue.
Mother tongue.
That was again...
has always been his focus area.
Yeah, he's in focus on it, and some of the statistics are out many times, even during the sessions. So these are areas, and he, as I mentioned recently, there was both continuity and change. Change in the form of a couple of things, as the committee oversight. Continuity, the question hour remained at 12 o'clock, which the House had changed a few years ago, thereby trying to insulate the disruptions. And give question hour, of course, all of us know, is one of the most important hours where a member holds the government accountable.
Indeed.
So these are there, and I'm sure the incumbent the incoming chairman and vice president has this task cut out very clearly.
Okay, okay, continuity and change there. Sanjay ji, these few aspects, when we look back at the 5-year tenure of outgoing Vice President M. Venkaiah Naidu, in terms of, focus as chairperson of, chairman of Rajya Sabha, focus on regional languages to be used, focus on the committee system, and ensuring decorum and discipline in the House, at the same time, facilitating meaningful debate.
See, after a long time, we had a vice president, chairman of Rajya Sabha, who directly came from that particular house. He had served in that house for a long period, and he had experience both as a member and as a minister. And thereafter, he became chairman of Rajya Sabha. And therefore, he exactly knew as to what members want, because as chairman, you have to take care of house, smoothly run house smoothly so that the government business can run, and at the same time the members in opposition or treasury benches, whichever, across party lines, can have their opinion, express their thoughts, feeling about their constituency, about issues, and so on and so forth. Since he had that experience, I think that went to his advantage, and he used his experience to running of the house, introducing new systems, like you said, regional languages. He himself comes from Andhra, and he knows as to what the MPs who actually cannot communicate in Hindi and English, or want to communicate in their own mother tongue, and or can express better in their mother tongue, should have liberty to express in those languages. You see, most of the times, some of best debates in Rajya Sabha has happened in English. So it was therefore, I think that is one great contribution of Venkaiah Naidu. Second, since he had been member of Rajya Sabha for long, and therefore he knew as to, he was also there when this particular debate about sanctity of Rajya Sabha or use of Rajya Sabha, should Rajya Sabha be there or not? That debate also went for a long time. Okay. Now that debate has subsided. He was presiding over the House. That particular debate was there. That debate happened, some meaningful exchange in various public platform happened, and thereafter that was gone. He was also chairman when COVID happened. Indeed. And therefore the House could not meet. And when House actually met, we all know how it met, no need to go in those details. But consequent to that, something happened which has a very long-term implication, a very positive one, in functioning of the House, that is digitization of various proceedings and the papers and so on and so forth. I think he himself also wrote a book that is a different thing altogether. And Venkaiah ji would always be remembered for his one-liners, though he put his heart out on some occasions when he was deeply anguished with the way the protest in House happened. But Venkaiah ji to people at large, a good administrator, good chairman. Okay. But more than that, I would like to again hear those one-liners from Venkaiah Naidu ji, as was his kind of, people used to release that. Okay, okay. Perhaps, we'll get to hear one-liners as well, but in different style and in different format as well from the new Vice President-elect there. But Pradeep ji, your assessment of the 5 years of tenure, and also what does it signify or mean in terms of the forthcoming 5 years and the new Vice President-elect?
Venkaiah ji had been the BJP General Secretary, then the President of the party, then Minister at the center. So he had a very wide-ranging experience and knew people across party lines, shared very good equation with them. So I think Mr. Jagdeep Dhankhar, he had also been a Minister of State for Parliamentary Affairs, and he has had a stint in the Rajasthan Vidhan Sabha. So that gives him a requisite experience. Secondly, he is a senior advocate, very well known on the criminal side. He has been president of the Rajasthan Bar Association. So he is very well versed in legislative matters, rules, constitution, all of this. I think that would stand him in good stead when he presides the proceedings.
Okay, okay. So past experience as well as the way things have to be handled.
Yes.
Clearly, the role is earmarked, but it depends on the person who sits in the chair as to how things will move ahead. Thank you so much, Pradeep ji, Mr. K.V. Prasad, and Sanjay Singh ji as well for sharing your views and insight as our expert panel was pointing out and analyzing not only the 16th vice presidential election, the way it went down, different political strategies being deployed by both the camps, the significance of the choice of candidate, the message which both camps perhaps might have tried to convey, but also the 5-year tenure of M. Venkaiah Naidu as Vice President and Chairman of Rajya Sabha, and what lies ahead for the new Vice President-elect, Mr. Jagdeep Dhankhar. We'll come back again. Till then, keep watching Sansad Television. Thank you.